So we are here for a very special on-location episode of the Christ-Centered Life at the North American Mission Board headquarters in Alpharetta, Georgia. And this is a special place for both of us. We've received a lot of training here. We've received a lot of encouragement here. And we're glad to be here for a few days, getting some more training and doing some more work with the North American Mission Board. We thought it would be a really great opportunity to sit in this place and think about the importance of the work in the North American church, in the mission field of North America.
We're big fans of the North American Mission Board because we have been we've witnessed kind of from the inside, we've witnessed the transformation of the North American Mission Board, and we have watched it go from a good organization. It was never a bad organization. It's always been a good organization with a good goal and a good heart, but really since we were first part of the North American Mission Board through church planting, and so that was around 2012 we were starting to engage with the North American Mission Board. And so even in our time serving in Miami, watching the transformation, so if you don't know, brief history, back in those days, it was just kind of we say it like this: if you said, hey, I'm a Baptist and I'll plant a church, they said, okay, let's do it. Mm-hmm. And that was kind of how it used to be, and we'll give you some funding and hope it goes well. And there were some processes in place. I don't want to be critical of what was before, but what we saw because of that is we saw, especially in Miami where we were, people would come and go so quickly.
Right.
I mean, some people would stay a month. They would move their families to Miami, get there, stay a month, and then leave, and never even plant a church, share the gospel, preach a message, anything. And so we watched the process go from that to we were there when assessment was introduced, and so the whole assessment process really helped us make sure that we were selecting the right planters. We saw spouse care put in place. That really gave couples and families the care that they needed to stay on the field long term. Yeah. And then since we've moved to Mobile, we've watched them put a mobilization process in place, which is basically, where do you find these church planters? How do you get guys and raise up guys within churches that will plant churches? So we've kind of watched that whole transformation, and the data speaks for itself. The health of church planting at the North American Mission Board is in an amazing place right now. So we love this building. We love North American Mission Board and what they do, their leadership. We're very thankful to be a part of it. I serve as a pastor ambassador, which just means that I encourage pastors, pray for them, check on them, and I just do that on a very part-time basis, and with pastors in the state of Alabama, kind of help be their connection point with North American Mission Board.
Yeah, and you and I have always had a heart for the nations. We've always loved international mission work. That's always been something that's been close to our heart. And so I know a lot of other people probably share that passion and might even find themselves asking, why would we invest so much in missions in North America? It feels like, aren't we a Christian continent? Like, why would we do that? And what we're seeing is there is so much lostness right here in our back door, across the street, in the high rises, that needs to be addressed. The gospel needs to go out in these places just as desperately as it does in these parts of the world that seem far from our reach.
I think most people know we're losing North America, but I think it's easy to kind of be in your own bubble. It's easy for me to be in my own bubble and not really think about how quickly we're losing North America. And so we're losing North America to the gospel. Europe is lost to the gospel. We're hoping and trying to gain some new ground there, but Europe's lost to the gospel, and we're having to retake Europe. So North America is in somewhat similar of a process, but I really believe through church planting and multiplication and even church revitalization that we can stem the tide of that. There is a new energy. There's a new sense of purpose, and you're right. We have to re-reach North America, if you will. But if you're in kind of like a bubble in your community. So we live in Mobile. There are so many great churches in Mobile. Mm-hmm. So if you just start thinking of churches in the city of Mobile, especially West Mobile, kind of from I-65 west toward Mississippi, you just start thinking about the number of churches that are there. Then there's a tremendous amount of healthy, good gospel preaching churches there. And so it's easy to be in that bubble and kind of think, well, in North America, if somebody wants to know about Jesus, they can find a place. There is a place proclaiming the gospel in North America. That's true in Mobile. That's not true, for instance, in Miami where we served.
Yeah, and the population growth is happening in the cities
Correct.
of America, of North America. And so when we see this exponential growth of residents and people who live in these places, but the growth of the church has not caught up to that, then it creates this huge divide and it causes a chasm that is a gospel wasteland. We like to call it a gospel desert, where there are these places where it just feels like there is no gospel presence, or the gospel presence is so small that it feels like it's overwhelmed by the amount of lostness around it.
I don't know if you remember when we did demographics for First for Christ-Centered Church, and I wish we had that picture because I wish we could show the listeners right now. But where we met was close to the coast, so half of this was in the water, but then the other half of it, was people, and so we did demographics, and I think we started with a 5 mile radius and said, hey, we want to send out postcards, invitations to everybody within a 5 mile radius if we were going to meet. It was over 300,000 people, and so we, by the way, did 300,000 mailboxes,
Right.
So we decided not to do that.
Yes.
We decided, we want.
That was a bit ambitious.
That's a bit ambitious. So we won't do that. I think it was 300,000 people, 100,000 something mailboxes.
It was a lot.
It was a lot of people.
Yeah.
And half of that is ocean. But then, so you and I know this, in that same 5 mile radius, how many churches are in that same 5 mile radius?
Maybe 2.
And one of them, since we've left, is closed down. So I don't know, even in that 5 mile radius now, there might be one church, and we're not talking about denominationally. We're not saying, oh, well, we need to get Baptist churches there or whatever. We're talking about gospel preaching churches, and even if you want to consider Catholic churches, actually in that 5 mile radius, I don't think there's a single Catholic church in that 5 mile radius. So you think about, that's basically the population of the city of Mobile. And there's not a single church in that area for those people. And that wasn't unique in Miami. It wasn't like, well, we found the one place where there were no churches.
Yes.
It was throw a dartboard on a map and there are no churches there.
Yeah.
And then Miami is not unique among cities in North America.
Right.
So when you start thinking about the great cities of North America, New York, Chicago, even Atlanta,
and even outside of the United States,
Toronto, that's right. Yeah, so when we say North America, we're including our neighbors to the north, Canada. There are just no churches. Yeah. They're just not there. Yeah. And so talk about a gospel desert a little more. The difference in living in a place like Mobile, we'll say West Mobile, because I think there's some gospel deserts in Mobile, and then living in a gospel desert. What difference does that make in a person's life?
Well, it makes all the difference because they're never having a touch point with a believer. If you're living in a gospel desert, every time you go to the grocery store, every time you go to the ballpark, when you have loss in your life, when you are experiencing tragedy or crisis, you are never encountering someone with the hope of the gospel to help point you to truth and life. And that makes a huge difference in the way you live your life. It's actually really interesting, and we hadn't planned to talk about this, but there is a retreat that we go to once a year with our pastors and wives, and we got word this week that at that retreat that the hotel staff, that is their favorite week of the year at that very nice hotel. For them they give us a great discount to be there. An
incredible discount. I don't think we can say how much of a discount they give us.
No.
Because the owners give that discount.
Right.
And the reason they give that discount is what you're talking about.
And the reason they continue to allow these pastors and wives to come at such a great discount is because he said it's their employees' favorite week of the year because the people are so kind. And that's the way it should be. When believers step into a world of any kind, it should greatly impact that world. It should greatly impact those people. And so our kindness should follow us there. Our patience should follow us there. Our goodness, our gentleness, our self-control. Those fruit of the Spirit should be with us as we're living our lives, and that should impact people who don't have that.
just give another example from our time living in Miami. We lived in the municipality of North Miami, so that was the actual city that we lived in, and that's where our church was. And so we did a lot of work with the city and the police department and the Chamber of Commerce and all those kind of things. Did it feel at times like you and I, our family, and then we had another pastor's family that lived in the same city, in the same neighborhood? But I think that was the only one of our pastors that actually lived in. We had 4 pastors. The other 2 lived outside of the municipality of North Miami. But did you feel at times like our family and the Hill family, like that we were the only Christians anybody in the city knew?
Yes.
Like it was like, well, we need a Christian. Call the Allens or the Hills.
Yes, it did feel like that, and we kind of took it a step further and said it felt like we were Amish.
Yeah, it did.
Like compared to everybody else in the city, just the way that people looked at us, approached us, and they were very glad to be around us. They were very
kind to us. The city was very kind to us.
Yeah, but yes, it definitely felt like we were set apart, which is what we should be.
Right.
We are called to be set apart.
And I think like kind of comparing that, like for us now, we live in the city of Mobile, and a lot of the people who listen are our church members. So kind of think if you were and the cities are about the same size. North Miami and Mobile, population wise, are about the same size. So think if like you were if the city needed to hear from a Christian perspective. Imagine if you were the only Christian family they knew of. Mm-hmm. And there are probably others, but like you're the one they know of. And so every time something comes up that needs a Christian voice, they say, well, I guess we'll check with you because you're the only ones we know of. Mm-hmm. And that's what it was like in North Miami. That's also what it's like in Los Angeles and in Chicago, Toronto. So just to kind of give our people the picture, North America is a vast continent. 386 million people.
Something like that.
Somewhere around 386, let's just say 390 million people live in North America. And if your experience is in Alabama, Georgia, Tennessee, especially those Mississippi, even Texas to some extent, if you're in those areas and that's your whole experience, you probably don't have a realistic picture of what it's like where most Americans live.
Yeah.
So 1 out of every 18 Americans lives in Los Angeles County. 1 out of every 8 Americans lives in California. So then you add on New York, you add on cities like Miami, and if you just look at a population map, the population centers of North America, and then where the churches are, that's where the people aren't.
Right.
Where the people are, that's where the churches aren't.
Right.
And so that's not to say that we're not thankful for churches all across the cultural South and kind of the Bible Belt. We're very thankful for those churches.
We are, but we have to look at why we are where we are and what purpose God has for us beyond that. And it's something really interesting that I've noticed. I don't know if you've noticed this or not, but a lot of people that I've met in Mobile have never really traveled outside of Alabama.
Yeah.
They've not really vacationed outside of Alabama. They've not really traveled for any business reasons outside of Alabama. And so they really don't have an experience, an actual personal experience outside of what it's like to be in Alabama in the cultural deep South. And even just putting yourself in an environment that is different will impact you one way or another, because you will see, oh, wow, okay, so everybody doesn't live the way that I live. Everybody doesn't think the way that I think. Everybody doesn't believe what I believe. And that will impact you. And so I think a really great first step for people who might be thinking, okay, well, maybe this is me. Maybe I'm in the cultural South. I'm in my happy bubble and things are going great. But I do feel a sense of calling and responsibility as part of the church to do something about this vast lostness. What is it I could do? Like, go on a trip to a place that's outside of your cultural context and just meet some people and see what the Lord might do in that.
Listen, we're big proponents of when you're on vacation, that doesn't mean you're on vacation from church.
Absolutely.
Find a local body of Christ and go to church there. So go to one of these great cities. Go to New York. Go to New York and find, and we can help you with this. You can go to the North American Mission Board website, find a church plant or a young church and go to church there. If you travel out to, California, you end up in Los Angeles and you go see a Dodgers game or whatever, whatever it is that you want to do out there, find a church plant and go to it. And experience what it's like outside of the cultural South to try to do church. Now, we need churches in cities like Mobile.
Right.
And we need churches in cities like Mobile for Mobile. So we've got an issue in our own city where, you take I-65 and you say I-65 West. Okay, you start thinking of churches. And man, there are great, healthy churches. And then, of course, you go up to Saraland, and Redemption Church is technically on the east side of I-65, but they're outside of that main kind of corridor of Mobile. Go from I-65 east back to the Bay, and there's some good gospel work going on there, but it's few and far between. So you have, I'm going to forget somebody, but I'm going to say two churches that come to mind. Downtown Church comes to mind, and then Three Circle Church, which is Three Circle Midtown. And there are some others, but there's not much gospel work going on, and there are a lot of people who live in that area.
And it's hard work.
It's very hard work.
It's very hard tilling.
Yes. So both of the churches that I just mentioned are actually campuses of other churches.
Yeah.
So they are in extensions of other churches that can help them with the funding and the people, that kind of thing, because it's really hard work to spread the gospel in those areas.
Yeah.
So if you're from Mobile and you think of that, man, how hard is it to reach that area east of 65? And then just kind of extrapolate that out to the United States. Get outside of the cultural South, and West Mobile would be kind of like the cultural South, and then east of 65 would be more like the gospel picture in these major cities across North America. And I can't stress it enough, that's where most people live. So if you take the 3 counties that make up South Florida, just 3 counties, that's almost the population of the state of Alabama. So state of Alabama, and I don't know how many churches are in the 3 counties in South Florida, but I promise you, we have 3,200 Baptist churches, 3,200 Baptist churches in the state of Alabama. I promise you, it's not 3,200 churches. In 3,200 churches total.
Of any kind.
It's not even 1,000 churches total in those 3 counties. Yeah. And so there's just a vast lostness. So I think we've talked about the problem a little bit. Oh, I do. One more stat I want to share with you. I heard this week that I want to share with you. In the year 1900, so at the turn of the 20th century, the dawn of the 20th century, 82% of all Christians in the world lived in North America or Europe. All right? So 8 out of every 10 Christians lived in North America or Europe at the turn of the 20th century. Fast forward 100 years, a little over 100 years, currently 33% of Christians live in North America or Europe. The other thing is there are only 2 continents in the world. Think about this. Out of all the continents, there are 2 continents in the world where Christianity is not outpacing population. North America and Europe. Wow. So so if you live in Mobile or you live in Birmingham or you live somewhere in the cultural South, you see all these churches around you. You think, yeah, we're doing okay. Not so much. So in Africa, the growth of Christianity is outpacing population significantly. In Asia, in the Middle East, the growth of Christianity is outpacing population growth. The only place that's not happening, Europe and North America. And here we sit in the middle of it with resources.
Yeah, and that's what I was going to say is we don't have the outpace of growth, but we have resources. We have been blessed with resources, and maybe that's why it's probably part of the reason we're at that 33% rather than that 82% or whatever number you said. I do believe that I see this in my own life. I think I see it around me, that the more we have, the less we depend on the Lord. The more resources we have, the less we feel the need to cry out to God to do something. And that's why we see these amazing things happening in these parts of the world where they don't have what we have. They don't have these resources. There is nowhere else to turn but to the Lord. and he does these miraculous things. And so I almost wonder if we haven't out-resourced ourselves in the way of not realizing why God graced us with those resources in the first place. God didn't give us resources so we could be resourced. He gave us resources to resource and the Great Commission and send it.
We have been, our church has been blessed with a great facility, First Baptist Tillman's Corner. Do you remember the first time you walked into that facility?
Yes.
What were some of your thoughts?
Well, aside from the fact that I wondered where the D went off of the Cycle Center.
That's everybody's first question.
Yeah. Where's the DI? I just thought, oh my goodness, look at the amount of space here and the fact that everything's here. Nothing has to be brought in or brought out or set up or torn down, and it's well kept. And you just think, man, what could a church planter do with this amount of space, and how many people could you cram into a building like this?
Do you remember the first time you walked into my office, the office that I have there?
Yeah.
I thought we would house 17 interns in this office.
An entire intern
This would be an
facility.
apartment. We would have 17 interns living in this office right here.
Yeah.
And so I often joke, and I'm very thankful for it, and our church is very gracious, but I often joke that I don't have an office. I have a 3-room apartment. And I'm very, very thankful for it. And listen, churches in the cultural South shouldn't tear down their pastors' offices. Right. That's not what we're saying. And we shouldn't say that First Baptist Tillman's Corner should get rid of its facilities. What we're saying is, to whom much is given, much is required.
That's right.
And I think, speaking for our own church, we have a lot of needs. And so we just dealt with some roof issues, and we're trying to get some, need to get some doors replaced. And so we kind of have these constant needs that come along, and those are real needs, and we need to address those needs. We have to disciple, reach, evangelize within our own congregation. But we also can't be blinded to how much we've been entrusted with. Yeah. And we've been entrusted with a tremendous amount of resources. Yeah. And so, and then just in general, I'm not saying First Baptist Tillman's Corner is a very generous church. So they kind of buck the trend on this. But so many churches say, hey, here's kind of a token gift to missions, and we're doing our own thing here. We just kind of, here you go. Yeah. Here's a little bit. And I'll just put it this way. For most churches, they need to be thankful that their members do not tithe and give the way that the church gives to missions. Yes. So I will say about our church is very generous. And if I went to our church tomorrow and said, we got a church planter, he needs $10,000, let's get it to him, our church would respond. Some church planners listening to this, we're going to get an email, $10,000. But our church is very generous. We give a lot to missions, but we can do more. Yeah, and I think the difference is, there was a season in church life in North America where the catchphrase was, we're a mission-minded church. Yeah. And that sounds good. But what we want to see is the people of the church living missionally. And yes. There's a difference in that. Big difference. There's a difference in mission-minded. That just kind of means my attention goes to it every once in a while. I think about missions. Maybe I pray for missions, which is great. That's no small thing to pray for missionaries. But living missionally means it affects every single facet of my life. And when I think about how our family is going to spend vacation, I actually think about it from the perspective of how can I leverage it for the gospel. Yeah. And, we could go to that same spot on Presley's Lake, like we do every year, or we could travel to a place of a gospel desert within the same amount of drive from where we live and interact with people we never met before and share the hope of the gospel with them over a meal. We could be intentional. I think it's something that our church has figured out, and we certainly want other people to get this. You can go to a place where there's a missionary or a church planter serving, and you can just bless them. If you don't share the gospel with anybody, if you don't go there and do anything, but you just go there and bless that family, and take the wife out and get her nails done or something, and just be a friend and be an encouragement and listen to them. Yeah. That makes a tremendous difference. It does. It's a huge shot in the arm for those missionaries that are serving on the field and wondering. They are asking themselves,
Does anybody care that we're here? Does God even see that we're doing this thing that we're doing?
So I want to give a challenge to those who are listening. Right now, this is something simple you can do. It really wouldn't change much of your budget. This year, if you have a family vacation planned over the next 12 months, plan it to go to a place, to a gospel desert. If you need help finding one, let us know. But one of the major cities in North America, find a church plant, go to church there, give. Start collecting money now so that when you give that gift in the offering plate that week, you're going to make a tremendous difference. That's going to make a difference. Now, you keep tithing to your local home church, but you maybe mark one activity that you and your family are planning to do on that vacation off the list, and you put that money in the offering plate at that church, and then do something to bless the church planter and his family. Maybe take some stuff for the kids and just bless them. And that's like a small thing that you can do. But to be honest with you, we're not asking you to do small things. We're kind of calling out to the church in North America, the church in the cultural South, to change the entire way you think.
Yeah.
To stop thinking, man, our church is growing. Look how great it is that our building's going to be full. And man, we're actually growing faster than church down the road, or man, the other church that my cousin goes to in another place. Look at how fast we're growing as a church. We might actually get to build a new building soon. Hey, if you need to build a new building, build the building. But we're asking you to shift your mindset to think of it this way. You have been put in the middle of a mission field called North America. And in order to reach North America, you're going to have to take some of your best people, your best resources, and you're going to have to send them outside of your church family. Mm-hmm. You're going to have to tell them, move to Miami, move to New York, move to wherever. Can you imagine? I mean, what if 50 people from First Baptist Tillman's Corner moved to Miami, Florida?
Yeah.
You don't think that would make
it? Some things.
I guarantee that alone would change. And if they bought houses all, within, if they went to our old neighborhood and 50 people, say, 10 families or so, bought houses in that neighborhood would never be the same.
Right.
And I guess that's the difference that we want people to see that they can make.
Right.
But it's gonna be costly.
It is. And here's the hesitation. We've got it good.
We do.
We live in very comfortable places. We have great jobs. We're near family. All those things. It's good. And I think what we want people to stop and consider is maybe the reason you've got it good is not so you could have it good.
Right.
And it's a blessing from the Lord. It really is. But the Lord resources people for His purposes. And so who are we to say, well, His purpose is definitely so that I can have it good.
Right.
We've got to ask the question, God, why did you give me vacation? Why did you give me this ability to do this thing? Why did you give me this skill? Why did you give me this passion? Everything the Lord has given us, every good and perfect gift is from the Lord. And we need to ask Him, Lord, why did you entrust this to me? And we have to be so careful not to try to hoard the things that the Lord has given us, because when we do, we're missing out on the purposes that He has given it to us in the first place. And so you had a really great example about that, just to kind of help us visualize why.
Well, yeah, it wasn't my example, and I don't have the data for it. So first I want to credit Vance Pittman, who used this illustration, and then I'm going to get the data, and I'm going to share this at some point in the future in a really specific way. Succinct way. It's going to be great. But for right now,
give us the rough version.
I'm just going to give you the really rough version. So he talked about, Vance Pittman shared with us yesterday, and he talked about Hoover Dam. And Hoover Dam was, I do remember he said that it took enough concrete to construct Hoover Dam that you could pave a 2-lane highway from New York to San Francisco.
Wow.
Yeah, so a lot of concrete. So all this concrete's put in place, and then backed up behind it, I believe he said 28 million gallons of water, but it's probably more than that. I do know that he said, once again, I remember the illustration he gave, is that there's enough water behind Hoover Dam in Lake Mead that it could cover the entire state of Pennsylvania a foot deep in water.
Wow.
So it's a lot of water. And so you go there and it's impressive and you see all this water and it's in the middle of a desert, right? You're out there in the middle of a desert and here is this huge lake and this massive concrete wall holding back all of this water. And you can see that water and you can say, wow, that's impressive. But the purpose of the dam is not to hold back the water. The purpose of the dam is to restrain that water momentarily so that it can be released to produce energy. And so that energy can provide life to everything that's around it. And that's, I think, the visual that we have to have about churches in the cultural South. That we've been given so many resources, but we've not been given those resources to hoard them and keep them. We've been given those resources to release them so that as we release them, it provides life to the continent around us. And so I think if we could get people to shift the mindset that we've been put in place in North America to reach North America, and we have a responsibility to reach North America. And so we, once a year at First Baptist Tillman's Corner, we're going to do our best to invite everybody, in the shadow of our steeple, if you will, within a 1 mile radius of our church. We're going to do our best to invite them to church. Why? We have that responsibility. Whether they come or not, we want to reach out to them. Well, the same thing is true. North America is our neighborhood. And we've got to reach North America. And we can't just look to the churches in California and say, well, you do that. 2,200 Southern Baptist churches in the state of California. There are 3,200 Southern Baptist churches in the state of Alabama. In the state of California, 1 out of every 8 people in America live in the state of California. We can't, as the 3,200 churches in the state of Alabama, say, good luck, hope it goes well for you out there. If we really care about North America, then we've got to be serious about reaching 1 out of every 8 Americans that lives in and even like from, I don't want to get into politics, but we all want to see cultural change. How are we going to see cultural change if we say, those people over there, crazy people over there in California, let's keep our country and let's let California be California. Well, 1 out of every 8 Americans lives in California. So if we want to see cultural change in the United States of America, guess where we've got to see cultural change? In the state of California.
Yeah, and we can't just say abandon them. We need
Right.
to say influence them.
And what drives cultural change? The gospel drives cultural change.
Yeah.
And so if we want to see change at this level, then we've got to see gospel change at this level. And this is really the goal. I mean, if we reach people with the gospel, everything else will work its way up.
Yeah.
If we don't reach people with the gospel, we're going to continue to see death and decay at the cultural, political, business, at every level. We're going to continue to see it. And so we want to see the gospel reached. We want to see the gospel propagated all across North America. One other stat I want to share with you, or set of stats, is about multiplication. So maybe people are listening to this and they say, yeah, but man, NAM is doing so good. You just said it earlier. And they are. They're doing a tremendous job. NAM will plant about 700 churches this year. And that's tremendous. And that's wonderful. And those are 700 real churches. That's not a Bible study meeting in some guy's basement where only his wife and his cousin are coming.
Right.
I mean, these are 700 real churches that are preaching the gospel, and so that's great. In order to stem the tide, in order to get ahead of the population growth, we need to plant around 2,000 churches every year. We're planting 700. Well, what about the other denominations? And hey, we're all for gospel preaching churches of any stripe. Well, NAM is the number 1 planter of churches. Number 2 is a denomination or a group that plants about 300 churches a year. So NAM is 150% ahead of number 2, and then it drops way down from there. So in total, in the evangelical gospel preaching world, we're planting less than 1,000 churches a year in North America. And so we need to more than double that. We need, if we're just going to do it from a Southern Baptist standpoint, then we need to plant 4 times as many churches as we're planting right now. That takes money, but even more than that, it takes people.
Right.
So money's important, giving to Annie Armstrong, giving to Cooperative Program. If you don't know what either of those are, that's just one of the ways that we fund church planting in North America. But how important are people? So go back kind of to the early days of Christ Center Church. If somebody offered you money or a family, which one do you take and why?
The family, and the reason is because you've got actual people there to help you do the mission. You know, if you could have an endless bank account, but if there are no believers there to help you actually share the gospel, if there's nobody to actually do the work of the Lord with you, you know, what are you going to do? You're going to pay this person who knows nothing about it to
Yeah.
to do. You need a team of people. You need a church. The church is people. The church is not money. It's resource with money, but the church is people. And I think that's really the key is thinking about generosity with our people. For a long time, we've thought about generosity with money, you know, through different offerings and campaigns that have helped us learn how to be generous with our money, and that's a good thing. We shouldn't not do that. But I do think we need to learn how to be generous with our people, and ourselves included. But you know, we need to see. And somebody really challenged us personally with this early in our church planting journey, and I'm so grateful that they did. We need to see people as resources that the Lord is willing to use however He wants to use. They don't belong to us. And so it makes it a lot easier to bless them and send them when the Lord calls them to a different location or transition or calling.
They don't belong to us.
They don't.
We don't have a right to hold on to them.
Right. And it's the same to be said of ourselves and our own families, that we don't belong to ourselves.
Right.
Our children don't belong to us. You know, we should be expectant and grateful when the Lord calls our children or calls our family or calls our best friend or calls, you know, our life group leaders to serve Him in a gospel desert or in a front lines type of a location. We should be grateful and celebrate that.
Yeah.
And as hard as it is to part with people, that's a hard thing to do. When we keep a kingdom perspective on it, it should be a celebration to say, thank you, Lord, that you're willing to use us in some small way. And so when we're willing to be generous with our people, what we find is God replaces tenfold,
Absolutely.
100-fold. You know, I mean,
You know, it's interesting, and our church doesn't know the numbers on this, and I need to share the numbers. We sent about 50 people to the corner church to do a revitalization effort in an area that we really believed Mobile County really needed the gospel. Do you know that our attendance has increased by about 150 people since we sent those 50 people out?
Wow.
So the Lord has replaced them 3 times over. Now, He might not always do that, and that's up to Him, but they don't belong to us anyway.
Right.
Those were not our people. Those
Right.
were God's people that He's calling to a new mission. And those were leaders. We sent leaders out. But in every one of those areas where those leaders went out, someone has stepped up, new leaders have emerged, and they filled those gaps. So I was thinking about a couple of things with our church in particular. I think the first 3 or 4 years that we were at First Baptist Tillman's Corner, our people stayed continually nervous that we were about to go to the mission field. Why? Because we talked about it all the time. So we use a lot of terminology like blank check, you know, write a blank check and let God fill it in. Once a year, we challenge our church to say, Lord, where do you want me to go? I'll go anywhere, do anything you want me to do. You tell me where to go. And we do. In fact, we're getting ready to do that in October. So I just, in our last deacons meeting, was kind of going through the calendar. And I said, you know, leading up to October the 4th and beyond October the 4th, we'll be talking about this. And I said, listen, I lead the way in this. So I say to the Lord, genuinely, my prayer is, Lord, if you call, I'll go. You tell me to go, and I'll go. If your calling is still for me to be the pastor at First Baptist Tillman's Corner, I'll stay right here and do this faithfully. But Lord, if you call me to the other side of the world, if you call me to Southeast Asia, if you call me to Europe, if you call me to one of the great cities of North America, the answer is yes. And I do that, number one, because I want to be faithful to the Lord, but also because I want to lead our people in that way. And what I hope I've taught our church is that you wouldn't want a pastor who didn't live his life that way. And so my life doesn't belong to me. And as much as I love being the pastor of First Baptist Tillman's Corner, if the Lord changes my assignment, I can't say to him, no, That's my call. That's my church.
Right.
That's my position. I can't do that. And so our church, I think, was continually nervous that you and I were about to go to the mission field. But just to be straight up clear with our church, we will. The answer is yes. If the Lord calls us tomorrow, we will say yes, and we'll do it with tears. We'll do it with grief in our heart, with missing our church family. But the answer is yes,
Right.
And that's how we want our church members to live.
And we have seen this. We have been the recipients of this.
Yes.
Where the Lord really helped us see how, in lots of facets of life, you can make the decision to let the Lord lead you, and you can be a huge impact in a gospel desert. And so we like to share the story of Luke, who came to Miami, and he had graduated, had an engineering degree, grew up in the cultural South, grew up in church. His father was in ministry. And
before you get to his Miami part, I think it's really important that people know why he had the heart he had.
Yeah.
Because he went to church at Lakeview Baptist in Auburn when he was in college at Auburn. And so, of course, he went to an incredible college, incredible school, War Eagle. Love this village on the plains. But even more so, the church he went to. They built this into him.
Yeah.
This was built into him. In fact, they sent him to us. We had a relationship with one of our pastors, had a friendship relationship with the pastor of that church. And so they knew about our church. And so when Luke was moving to Miami, they said, this is where you need to go.
Yeah.
So that's how that all happened in his life.
Yeah, but he decided to move to Miami because he thought, you know what? I'm a single guy. I have just graduated college. I've been given this skill, and I could easily walk right into a job in, any given town of Alabama and live the life that I've always lived and get a great job and roll right through like everybody else. But he thought, I'm a single guy. I'm not tied down to anybody right now. I'm not tied down to anything right now. And I have been given this skill. Where might God use me? Where might I be needed in a gospel desert? And so he strategically chose to take a job in Miami, knowing that there is so much lostness there, with the intention of plugging into a church plant and helping a church plant. And so when he came and visited our church, he connected with you. And not only did he just attend our church plant, but he was intentional to take you out to lunch and explain to you, hey, I am here with a purpose. I'm here.
Can I run the list?
Yeah, you run the list.
It's just something that sticks in my mind. So first of all, he came to our church day one, and you're always excited when there's a first-time guest there. But day one, he comes to our church, and he says, hey, great being at your church today. Can I take you out to lunch this week? Sure. So I go out to lunch thinking like I got to kind of like woo this guy over to be part of our church. And he just says, like, takes that off the table right away. Hey, I came here to be part of your church. Like, you don't know me, and I came here to be part of your church. And then he said, sorry, the older I get, the more emotional I get, because the more these things are just so real to me. He said, let me tell you what. He said, I'm going to be a member of your church. I'm going to tithe. I'm going to more than tithe. He said, I'm going to be the first person you call if you need something. He said, I might not be able to say yes, but if I can't say yes, I want the opportunity to be the first person to say no. And he said, if somebody needs something, I want to know about it. He said, I'm going to be a volunteer staff member. He said, you're never going to pay. I don't want a dime in pay from your church, but I'll do anything. He said, I'll sweep the floors. I can teach. He said, if it's a crunch time, I can step in and preach for you. I can play the bass. He said, if it's down to it and you need me to lead a few songs, I'll lead a few songs. I'll be there when you start, and I'll be there when you finish every Sunday, which was just huge. And we just needed that so much. We needed those kinds of people. And Luke, and he moved into our intern house. He didn't move into our intern house because he couldn't afford to rent some cool apartment downtown. He moved into our intern house because it was a season where we didn't have any interns living there, and we counted on those interns living there to be able to pay the rent for that house, not so we could have an intern house, but that so Joey and Brooke Wood, with their 2 kids, could live in that house and be there, and Joey could work the 17 different jobs that he worked to be a pastor in Miami, we needed people to rent that house. And so he moved into a utility room. He didn't move into a bedroom. He moved into a utility room and slept in a bunk bed so that he could pay rent to that intern house. And then he did everything. And he said, by the way, I'm going to take you out to lunch once a month, and you're never going to pay. You're not even going to pretend to pay. I'm just going to pay for it. So it's settled. Yeah. He did every single thing that he said he was going to do there in that conversation. And he made a massive difference in our church. And and then, you know what? He moved back. He was there for a couple of years. Met a girl that came and served as an intern in our church, and they ended up getting married. Now he is a faithful member of a church. He led the pastor search committee for his church in Sylacauga, Alabama, and they recently found a pastor. So last time he and I talked, he was leading that, and he was looking for recommendations of pastors there, and so they found a good pastor there. So he's faithfully serving there. I think he's going to end up being the mayor of Sylacauga one day. But that changed the world for us. Now, had he gone to get a job, in Montgomery or somewhere, and plugged into a great church there in Montgomery, he would have been a really good member, but just like one of 1,000 other guys that could step up and do something. For us, he changed the world for us. Yeah. And then I look across First Baptist Tillman's Corner, and I think there are people sitting in this room who could change the world for a church planter reaching somebody in a gospel desert. Yeah. And I would say this, and I'll just ask you the question. I know the answer. If we were planting today, we're moving back to Miami, and First Baptist Tillman's Corner said, hey, we'll do one of two things, your choice. We'll write you a check for $100,000, or we'll give you 4 families that will move with you. Which would you choose?
100% the families.
4 families.
Yeah. Because that money grows cold.
It does.
and you can use it up pretty quickly in a city like Miami.
$100,000 goes nowhere in a city like Miami.
But the people that are, we kind of attributed it to trench warfare a lot when we were in the planting world, but the people that are in the trench with you that can speak the truth to you in those moments where you're tempted to believe a lie, or that you can see God doing amazing things in him. I mean, Luke did a lot for us, and I'm grateful for all that he did and all that he did to bless our church. But we also got to witness God's favor on him. Yes. We got to witness the Lord grow him.
Absolutely.
We got to witness the Lord bless him with his wife that he would not have met had he not gone in obedience to the Lord to Miami. And so that builds my faith too.
Yeah,
to see
absolutely. God
doing amazing things in the lives of the people that you're serving with is a huge faith builder. And so if there are no people, then you miss out on that.
And if you're trying to plan your family's life out, like you're a dad or a mom, and you're kind of like looking at your kids and you're saying, well, let's plan their life out. And we want them to meet a nice Christian girl from the country in North Alabama. The last thing you would do is say, well, let's get our son down to Miami. Right. But God did that.
Yeah,
and he was faithful to do that. And he did that, and it wasn't just Luke. Luke just kind of everything comes together in Luke. There were so many people who made that kind of difference. And the reason, one of the reasons I say I'll take the 4 families is because I know if I get 4 mature Christian families, they're going to be, even financially, worth a lot more than $100,000 to me down the road, because they're going to give to our church and they're going to tithe to our church. And we can all find jobs and we can make it work, and we can reach people if there are people there. But if there are no people there, then it doesn't matter if we have $1 million in the bank. Yeah. We don't have anybody on our team, then we're not going to make it. And so I think that we but also financially, let me be very clear. We are saying that the church in the cultural South, and we've said this for years, the church in the cultural South has been entrusted with a level of financial resources that is unparalleled. The greatest single source of missionary funding in the history of the church has been the cultural South of the United States of America. Now, we're losing that. We've got to re-reach the cultural South. So we've got to be in the process of re-reaching Mobile. We've got to re-reach Huntsville and Montgomery and Birmingham and then all of the small cities and all the small country towns. We've got to re-reach those areas. Christianity dies within a generation if we don't reproduce. So we've got to reach the new generations. But we also have to look around and say, wow, to whom much is given, much is required. And we need to write bigger checks, and we need to give bigger chunks of our budget, but we also need to be willing to part with our people and encourage and bless our people. And we've got to make this normal. If we're going to plant 2,000 churches a year, not just in the major cities, but also in the small towns, in the gospel deserts in Mobile County. There are gospel deserts in Mobile.
Yeah.
If we're going to do this, then we've got to see, and church revitalization plays a role in this. So sometimes when we say planting a new church, what we mean is finding a church that if nothing changes, it's going to die within 5 years or a year or something like that. And we send new life into that. And we send new life into that church. And that church, we don't lose it. We save it. And that goes into that 2,000 number. We kept a church, and now it is a vibrant gospel preaching church.
Yeah.
We've got to do that, and we've got to capture that vision as the church in the cultural South.
And I think what we have to remember is in these gospel deserts, every once in a while you'll find a rose blooming in a desert.
Yeah.
You'll find signs of life in a desert when you get there. And when I think about our journey in Miami, we were very surprised by some of the people that we met who had been there, who were waiting,
right,
who needed us to be there.
Praying for a church to be planted in that area.
Yes, and then how they impacted us.
Yeah.
So, I get teary-eyed thinking about the people who selflessly served our family, They were so happy we were there.
Yeah.
And they selflessly served our family to keep us there.
Yeah.
And, so we have to realize that you don't know what your family could be to
right.
those people in those places that have been waiting for so long.
Yeah. And you think, I can't move my family there because of this, because of that. And listen, honestly, that was never a question for us. But it was a question a lot of people asked of us. How are you taking your family to that kind of place? So it could be Miami, or it could be New York or Chicago or, Los Angeles, whatever area you want to think of. I'm from the country. In the country, we write songs about how we don't like those places. That's what we do. And we love those songs. And one of my favorite songs growing up was My Home's in Alabama, no matter where I lay my head. And I just that was like a part of my identity. My home's in Alabama. And so you think, well, I can't do that. And it would be so bad there. And it would be so this there. And it would be so, look, if the Lord calls you to that, the Lord has already gone before you. Mm-hmm. And He is going to bless you. He's going to bless you in ways that you could never even imagine, with friendships, with lifelong friendships. Mm-hmm. And it's going to be a battle. But you know what? Here's the thing. We're already in a battle. We're already in a war. We just don't realize it.
Yeah.
We walk around like we're inside in some ways. If you're not careful in the cultural South, you can walk around inside the base, if you will. So you're inside the base. The enemy's out there. Things are bad out there, but man, things are good in here. And you go into the cafeteria. You're going to your bunk at night, and you're sleeping. You pass the little place where all the weapons are, and you're trained on how to use it. You've been trained 1,000 times. You've been to tens of thousands of Sunday school lessons. You've probably been trained in how to share the gospel so many times you can't even remember which method you want to use. You probably know faith. 3 circles. The ABCs. The Roman road. John 3:16. All those things, and you keep going to the mess hall and getting food. You keep walking by the armory. You train with those weapons. Then you go to your bunk bed and you go, man, this is a pretty nice place to live. No, it's a fort, and outside of that fort is where the battle is. Mm-hmm. And you've been trained in all those things, and you have those meals, and you have that place to sleep because of the mission. Right. The mission is outside of those walls. And so whether it is outside of the walls in your own community and across the street, or for us at Tillman's Corner in the parking lot, or your mission, your team, if you will, is deployed to a city like Miami or Chicago or Toronto or Alberta, the province of Alberta, whatever it is, that is your calling and that is your mission, and that's why you have the things you have. That's why you have the church buildings. That's why you have the church staff. That's why you have a life group. That's why you have a D group. That's why you have those things to train you for the mission. That's the mission we've been called to.
Yeah.
So to kind of land the plane here, we could talk about this all day because this is really close to our heart. I think what we want you to walk away from this is not necessarily, hey, I'm selling my house and moving to wherever. Although if God uses this to call you to do that, that's great. Just shift your mind. Think differently about North America. Think differently about your own church. Think differently about what God has given you and why He might have given it to you. And then just open your hands and say, Lord, all I have is yours. All my church has is yours. We're not going to kind of try to grab on and bring in and hoard as much as we can. We are going to say, Lord, how do we advance your kingdom as a person, as a family, as a church, wherever, however, whatever it takes.
Yeah.
That mindset shift is what we have to have in the church in North America.
Yeah, embracing God's math.
Yeah.
That when 10 minus 5 equals 50.
That's right.
I mean, it's just the way He does it. And so expecting that, but saying, God, I want to be a big part of that. I want to be on the front lines of that in whatever opportunity you give me to do that.
Make it normal that our churches and our Christian families continually give people away, give resources away, multiply, share what we have, make that normal. That's what we want to see. That's what we have to see in the church in North America.